Hey, hey, Sben. Should I call you Seth? Should I call you Sben? Would you
Uh,
like to?
S- Seth would be good.
Okay, how's it going, Seth? How you doing today?
I'm doing all right.
Wonderful. So today we are going to be talking about what are we talking about?
SourceCred.
SourceCred. Oh, I know a lot about SourceCred. We've been very intimate with it at Metagame. Um, yeah,
Indeed.
it's been integrated into pretty much our way of life for the past 3 years. So definitely excited about what you'll tell us about now. So thank you so much for coming on. And I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Seth Benton, also known as Sben. My pronouns are he, him, and I've been contributing to SourceCred for over 3 years now, which is kind of an eternity. Um, and here to talk about SourceCred and give a little update where things are. So if you're not familiar, SourceCred is a tool for communities to measure and reward value creation. And the origin of SourceCred was Juan Benet, the founder and CEO of Protocol Labs, was looking for a way to pay open source developers working on projects like IPFS and libp2p that Protocol Labs was depending on. And wondering, what if we paid all these contributors with crypto? And they met up with SourceCred's founder, Dandelion, who had these ideas that met that need, and SourceCred was born. And what SourceCred aims for is kind of a buzzword now. It's intersubjectivity. As we know, reward systems have two main approaches generally. You've got subjective approaches, such as contributors reviewing each other or giving a rating to a contribution. The problem with these systems is that they tend to be biased and don't scale too well. I think Coordinate has done this really well in a way that avoids some of these problems, but yeah, that's the general problem with subjective approaches. And then there are objective metrics, such as like per commit, per line of code. And the problem with this, is that it's just too gameable. If you're paying money according to these metrics, eventually people are going to start just working for the metrics, and fails pretty much every time. So the approach that SourceCred's taken is to use the PageRank algorithm, which some of you may be familiar. This is the algorithm that Google famously uses to rank web pages. And what it does is it takes raw data about contributions and metrics and subjective evaluations of contributions, puts them into this PageRank algorithm, and spits out a score for every contribution like in the system, and it puts those into a graph called the contribution graph. You can see like a little diagram of that here. Let's say you chat in person with someone, and that inspires a forum post proposing a feature, and that feature gets coded up as a pull request. All those contributions are put into the system and given a score via PageRank. Here's a screenshot of the product if you haven't seen it yet. And the platforms that SourceCred supports are GitHub, Discourse, and Discord. We also have the initiatives plugin, which allows arbitrary contributions to be input into the graph. So we have been dogfooding SourceCred and paying contributors via the algorithm now in something we call the Cred Experiment. This began in September 2019. We've distributed about 2 million grain, which is our token, which is pegged to a dollar most of the time anyway. The USD value distributed is that we distributed is around 1.75 million, and we started off like small, doing just 500 grain a week, and ramped it up to 20,000 grain a week, and that continued until relatively recently. This was supported by grain buys from Protocol Labs, individuals, and also tithing. We've integrated with some really great projects, including MakerDAO, Friends with Benefits, Metagame, of course, which was the first community other than SourceCred to pay people according to cred scores, which they call XP. And they've been really amazing partners this whole time. Stacks, Aragon, Token Engineering Commons, Giveth, and a whole bunch more that I'm leaving out. Most of this time, our revenue model has been tithing, which is basically donations. We've suggested 5% of tokens distributed. That's very roughly covered about 8% of the costs. And special shout out to Maker, Metagame, OneHive, and Stacks. Those are our biggest tithers. As some of you may have heard, the Cred Experiment has come to an end. This was a couple of months ago. And long story, very, very short, we were negotiating with Protocol Labs to get some more funding, but due to some like internal conflict and lack of agreement on the direction of the project, and just people leaving, including our lead dev, who left to take a regular job. Basically, we realized that we couldn't meet the promises that we were making, for this money, and so we made the very sad decision to wind down the org, as we really didn't see a path forward to getting alternative sources of funding. The final payouts for the Cred Experiment went out in April, and we spent the last couple of months winding down the treasury, eventually grain being redeemed for 37 cents on the dollar, and paying off liabilities. This has led to people thinking SourceCred is dead. The reports of SourceCred's death have been greatly exaggerated. SourceCred is not dead. The org supporting it has shut down, and we're no longer paying people. We've just moved to a standard open source model. But not to downplay this. This was a big deal in the community, and we very intentionally treated this as a dying process. We had a grieving ritual. Shout out to Marcy, who facilitated that. We've done a sense-making retrospective with the Meta-ETH researchers. These are ethnographers that have been embedded in SourceCred for about a year. You can see there's a link there to a post with some very high-level initial results if you're curious about that. On a personal note, this was probably the saddest thing I've experienced in my adult life. I was grieving this pretty harder than any relationship by far. But it was good, and also tricky because SourceCred is not dead. As Metagame, I think, put it really well in their newsletter. SourceCred is dead, long live SourceCred. And I want to just read an excerpt from that newsletter because I think it expresses really where we're at. However, there's a hugely important distinction to be made between a concrete working product and the team responsible for building and maintaining it. The SourceCred community has been very careful to point out that what is indeed winding down is the organization behind it and not the whole algorithm. This distinction should always be kept in mind in Web3 because it is exactly what differentiates it from its predecessor. Corporations, businesses, and organizations don't have to be exclusively tied to their product anymore, and their product can keep going on being upgraded by interested contributors independently of whether they are official members of the organization or not. In other words, through the renaissance of open source philosophy in Web3, we are now witnessing a new phenomenon in the sphere of digital infrastructure. It has been witnessed already by various Web3 natives, but to truly bring this phenomenon to awareness, it deserves its own name. For lack of a better term, let's call it organizational product decoupling, or OPD for short. So a lot of people are wondering, where the hell is SourceCred? So I want to just give kind of my honest assessment of where things are, with a giant disclaimer that a lot of this is just my opinion, and I'm trying my best to reflect the communities as best as possible, but just put that grain of salt on there. So like what's really strange is that I believe SourceCred has achieved the elusive product market fit. We have some major partners. If we'd launched a token in 2021, we'd probably be sitting on millions of dollars. And communities are continuing to use and maintain their SourceCred instances. Metagame, I know, at least for the time being, is continuing to use SourceCred. Maker is still using SourceCred and actually just spun up a new instance to experiment with paying their delegates. And we're seeing new communities pop up every day using SourceCred instances. If you check out our introductions channel, you'll see some of the cool projects. Tech support is still active, and we're still providing active tech support there. We are looking for a maintainer. Our lead dev that's left has said that they can review a few pull requests, but we do need someone to take over the basic maintenance and potentially future product development. There's been some discussion around this, and basically it's kind of open at this point. We did decide that everyone did decide that a good candidate would be MetaDreamer. So MetaDreamer, if you're listening, SourceCred has a giant boombox outside your window, and would love to talk if you're interested. But really, and if people are interested, feel free to come by the community. I will say the SourceCred community is fairly unique. If the words queer, ally, non-extraction make you uncomfortable, that might be uncomfortable for everybody. But in general, the community is very friendly and open-minded. And also, I want to point out, very open or friendly to forks. If it's an adversarial fork that's going to harm the community, obviously that's a different story. But we totally also welcome forks, and I suspect that there are a few in the wild also. It's worth noting that some pretty major projects have been inquiring for the last few months, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some interesting things out there. And I also, and this is more my personal opinion, I want to put this out there for people who are concerned about building on SourceCred. So it's possible that SourceCred is complete. And this is more my opinion, but but just bear with me. Obviously, SourceCred, there's a lot more that can be built with SourceCred, but the basic product really hasn't changed, in my opinion, in around 2 years. A ton of work has been done, and I'm going to address some of that. But the basic interface, the basic algorithms have stayed relatively the same. As SourceCred, I think, found out a little earlier than other places, shipping product in a decentralized org is really hard, and harder if you are paying yourselves with the thing that you're building as well. That said, in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of maturing and hardening of the code base, and I want to just run through really quickly some of the major components that other projects can use as Legos. So CredRank, this is the main algorithm. This is actually the third iteration of the algorithm. The original that most people don't know about was completely scrapped and rewritten from scratch. There's a link to a pod here from William Shargan, the co-founder of SourceCred, who goes into that history and the lessons learned. And then the second version was Timeline Cred, which is the main algorithm most people have used for the last couple of years. And then CredRank was a evolution iteration of Timeline Cred that addressed some of the quirks in Timeline Cred, made it more performant, and just sort of generally hardened it. From what I've seen, I've not seen any major flaws in the incentive design in CredRank or anything like that. So that's a really solid piece of technology. We also have written an alternative new algorithm in the last year called CredEquate. That's got some exciting possibilities. That's basically in maybe a beta stage right now, but it is being used by the Stacks advocate community, who seems to like it. And this has some really interesting possibilities, including being a little bit more accessible to people building on SourceCred. That's the intention of it. It uses a much simpler algorithm based on algebra instead of the PageRank algorithm. The plugins are designed such that you can combine them in a more interoperable way, and also, because the math is simpler, you can calculate scores in near real time, and so you can play with parameters and see the outputs right away, and that could make it easier for communities to explore different incentive designs. And so yeah, there's a link there to a lot more on CredEquate if you're exploring that. And then the plugins. These plugins have seen a lot of use and a lot of hardening over the last couple of years. They're all in pretty good shape. In part to Metagame being the first to use a lot of this stuff and give us a lot of feedback. So props to them. But also things like, OneHive being attacked, distributing $50,000 of their token a week with SourceCred and getting attacked. We built some stuff in response to that. Likewise, MakerDAO's done some interesting work on the Discord plugin, or Discourse plugin, sorry. So anyway, again, this is largely my opinion, but these are, I think, some solid building blocks that people can use. There's also, I would say, there's also a lot of opportunity here. In fact, the longer I work on SourceCred, the sort of larger the opportunity space becomes. And I think we've only just barely scratched the surface of it. The governance surface, all the possible parameters of the algorithm, there's a huge space to explore, possibilities to explore there. There's different use cases. For instance, I'm interested in DeSci and refi lately, and have been working with the Spark Contract Research Forum to get a SourceCred instance up. They actually just started paying contributors for contributions on their forum last month, and I think they're going to be doing that moving forward. So if there's a nice little opportunity to earn some DAI for writing about DeSci there. Just one example. There's the external plugins. I think these have like largely been unexplored unless there's some like stuff out there that I'm not aware of. But there's like a lot there. You can plug almost anything into SourceCred if you have the knowledge. Giant disclaimer on there that like having the knowledge is not necessarily easy, but like it's totally doable. Also, just like philosophically, like one thing that I've been very like surprised by working with SourceCred is that people's experience of the algorithm is often more determined by how they view it. The scores get in the ballpark, but people can have wildly different experiences based on the stories they tell themselves, their beliefs about the algorithm, and like the whole space of possibilities there is also very large and presents some interesting opportunities for designing experiences, for coming up with like fair regenerative systems, everything. We also have like a lot of researchers interested in us. As I mentioned before, the MetaETH ethnographers have been studying us like monkeys for the last year, and there's a link to more about that there. We've also recently saw some like a lot of like PhDs dropping into our chat looking to analyze graph data. So that's some interesting stuff there. Whoop. And so, yeah, how to get involved? You can still get involved. SourceCred is still a thing. You can join our Discord. We're still having community calls every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific. That's a really good way to like just comment, ask questions if you're a newcomer, and get a better sense of everything. Whew, okay. I ended on time.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was a great overview of where SourceCred's been and kind of the progress and how to get involved. Thank you. There is an incredible amount of depth that you didn't have time to get into about the settings. So definitely one of the things that I've noticed about SourceCred is it's really how you configure it for your organization. So being able to get in there and mess with the settings and set it up for your community and figure out how your community is going to engage with it is half of the battle. And I'm very happy to see that you guys are still active and building, although not actively, and that the organization was allowed to move on. I think the excerpt that you read from SourceCred is dead, long live SourceCred was amazing too, and it is a part of the coordination that we go through. It's like there's an effort to build something, you build the right thing, and then if we're stuck supporting something that's kind of already built, then we don't have the room to grow and continue. So that's like one of the things about AA is that the groups and the communities are what manage it and support it rather than a leader. And I think the same is really powerful for SourceCred. So has there been any pullback from communities that have been using SourceCred, or people doubling down, or have people felt the impact from the organization stepping back?
So yeah, I wish I had like a clear picture of that. just tracking the communities that I've been working with, they have continued to use SourceCred. And some of them are doubling down, like Maker, for instance, spinning up a new instance for their delegates. But there probably are communities that have stopped using SourceCred. And I wish I had more to tell you on that.
Are there parts of SourceCred that specifically want to get developed out, or that teams that are working on it that might be outside of the SourceCred community?
Yeah. I mean, so like, we've been approached by like a lot of projects that we're just kind of like exploring. I know of at least 3 governance platforms that have been poking around, thinking about integrating SourceCred. I don't think I'm at liberty to say any of their names, but I think that SourceCred has clearly proved its usefulness in generating useful governance signal, if you will. And so I expect we'll see some movement on that. DSize also really interesting. Science obviously has reputation system issues, and I think SourceCred could do a lot there. But this is really just speculation. We'll have to see.
Because one of the hard parts about governance is a lot of it is almost like politics, right? A lot of it is getting people to voice their opinion and actually participate. So that's one of the things I love, is like it tracks engagement. But something like integrating snapshot or even direct Moloch votes, where people's engagement with their governance could be tracked, where SourceCred would be hugely important for getting people to participate in governance rather than kind of a passive participation.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think people should be paid, for the time it takes to do governance work, like in a lot of cases anyway. Yeah.
So let's see. I've got a few questions from people. So let's see. Is there a way of using SourceCred as alternative government engine to mitigate plutocracy, so that governance is kind of a hybrid of reputation and tokens?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a huge design space there. The way that I've personally been thinking about it is just use SourceCred scores as a signal. However it makes best sense in your system. I will say that we tend to see a power law distribution in cred scores. Basically, you have a small group of people doing most of the work. However, that's something that you see in literally every network, and so it's not a surprise. I think that there is an important distinction, though, between cred scores and rewards or other actions you're taking based on scores. You could, for instance, have uneven cred scores and pay everyone above a certain threshold the same amount, for instance.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that an organization needs to spend its budget. So as you say, the things that we're using today, they're tools that help you manage. None of them are going to be the end-all solution. It still comes down to effective management of people. So thank you so much for all of the wonderful work that SourceCred has done over the years. I've definitely had an intimate relationship with it, and we've spent a lot of months digging into how it works, and it's very, very sophisticated. I think it's great balance between recent history as well as the past, and it's got a certain bias, but it's all part of how you tune it. So getting into the settings and effectively understanding it is a workshop in and of itself, but it's definitely worth it. And I definitely recommend communities to check out SourceCred for tracking engagement across a wide variety of things. And we saw a few different tools today that could definitely be great integration points. So if Coordinate or Clarity or any of those others are watching, SourceCred is OG, and having that kind of integration and support would definitely be something that the communities and DAOs that are ingrained with SourceCred would appreciate. So thank you so much. And I definitely recommend that you check out the Discord. And Dandelion and the crew were some of the first people that helped align me in Web3. So you guys are amazing. Thank you so much, Seth, for coming on. Do you have any more closing statements about SourceCred?
Yeah, I'll just plus one that and say it's an infinite game, and we're very grateful to Metagame for being the first and being with us on this journey.
Great, thank you.